Hey, it's Adrian and welcome to another episode. In this one I want to, I suppose, point the spotlight inwards a little bit to have a think about some of the things that have been going on. I just want to float some ideas around to bring them to the forefront of our minds, if you will. Number one is I've been reading an article which I'll put a link in the description, which is about SAGE, the SAGE group, and how they, up until 3 days before Boris Johnson did his U-turn, were actually suggesting that lockdown would be a bad idea. And yet all of a sudden they went silent for 3 days, and then after that Boris Johnson did his U-turn and we found ourselves in lockdown for, well, it's been several months now. In addition to that, on the 19th of March, the British government downgraded COVID-19 and it no longer had the status of a high consequence infectious disease, and yet we still have lockdown. Since that 3-day gap with SAGE, all of a sudden now they are towing the party line, and a whole bunch of interesting things have happened. The Queen's been put under effectively house arrest. Buckingham Palace looks, from the videos I've seen, like it's been largely shut down. I've seen a change in the display of the kind of coat of arms that's next to the government when they're talking. It normally has the Latin writing. That's gone. Of course, that might just be a rebranding exercise. I don't know. Seems a bit of an odd time to be rebranding. And then you have this continued lockdown, which is bizarre. And that's the bit that I also wanted to draw our attention to, because lockdown is social isolation. Now, there's a couple of things that I'm going to just read to you. I'll put links to them, and then if you want to, you can go and do some digging along that, because social isolation is something very interesting. Social distancing is actually derived from social isolation, an MK-Ultra tactic developed by the CIA in the early 1960s and consistently deployed since then against enemies of the state. The CIA determined it was the ideal tool by which to destroy another human being, preferably even to physical torture. That sounds nice. And then on here, this was Holistic Life Mama. Humans need connection. To thrive both physically and mentally, they need physical touch and community. In the words of human rights attorney Lee Dundas, social distancing doubles the risk of death, causes depression, sadness, cognitive decline, loss of executive function, obesity, impaired immunity, and more. On brain scans, brains of those who have been socially distanced from others are as damaged as those who sustained brain injury. And I want to just point you to another one called Cult Mind Control Techniques, and we'll just read a few of these, but I'll put a link to the article so you can read the rest. Isolation. One of the methods by which groups convert and retain members is by separating them from influences that enable or encourage them to think in contrary ways. Excluding contrary influence. If a person is provided with persuasive arguments, they may be dissuaded from joining the group or even persuaded to leave by contrary arguments, particularly if the original arguments are shaky. Think about shutting down of all the social media contrary to what's going on in the mainstream media, perhaps. Physical isolation. The first stage is to isolate people from external influences by moving the people physically away from them. Hence, the weekend sessions is most effectively done when there is no way for people to escape. For example, they were transported there by group members and it's a long way home. Isolation may also be within the walls of a building, within a town or city, although now it is easy for the person to leave, or even within one room. For single meetings, this is often all that is needed. Even meetings in public places is sufficient if no dissuading messages may be seen or heard. The bottom line is often the question of how far different from the person's life the persuasive message is. If they are being told how bad the world is, then meeting in a pleasant restaurant is probably not very effective, yet it may be a good place to talk about the joys of the group. Mental isolation. There are many ways a person can be made to feel alone and hence seek the attention of whoever is there. If they are told that all they have once held to be true, then they will start to feel uncertain. Emotional isolation occurs when they feel that others who they once trusted actually do not care about them. For example, if communications from friends and family are blocked, it may be suggested that they have not communicated because they do not care. Fear about others not caring may be amplified in discussions. Solitary confinement is known as severe punishment. A full physical isolation leads to full mental isolation. Confined prisoners may hallucinate, lose track of time, become depressed and desperate. Any feelings of being alone leads to seeking any company, and any discussion is to fill the intellectual and emotional emptiness. Control of media. Once the physical isolation is achieved, a further step is to use information control to ensure that no contrary messages appear by accident. Thus, newspapers, television, books may all be removed, censored or controlled. These can be replaced with confirming and persuading literature and other media. Well, then obviously in our case, it's just controlling all the main media anyway. If all around them the people see messages that point in one direction, then they are more likely to accept the messages as true. Messages from apparent different sources that all say the same thing can then be more persuasive than from one source alone. Social confirmation. Perhaps the most persuasive message is one that you are told in the corridor by friends who seem not to have any particular axe to grind. Social confirmation occurs when everyone else confirms the core message. What is not always noticed is that this is also a social isolation. Those who would contradict the message are being kept away. Excluding contrary thinking. A final level of persuasion is to isolate thoughts within the heads of the people being persuaded. Black and white thinking. With the use of polarized values and messages, the groups are painted as being whiter than white and everyone else has darker shade of black. God only knows how black I must be then. Choices are stark even in thinking. There is no maybe. You are either with us or against us. Isn't that something George Bush said once? Guilt. When values are involved, then the choices are not just between agreement or disagreement, they're about good and bad. Any thought that is against the group values and rules is framed as bad, which carries a heavy guilt penalty. People can thus be persuaded and coerced into feeling a strong sense of shame about every bad thought they have. Phobias may even be induced about contrary thinking, and even the thought of having a wrong thought can induce panic. Thought stopping. Thought stopping includes various methods of stopping thinking by distraction or dissuasion. For example, a group member who meets someone outside the group and tries to get them to leave the group will effectively isolate themselves from argument by retreating back inside their head and ignoring the dissuasive argument. Now, I'm going to leave you with that because in my eyes and in my mind and in my heart, that is exactly what this social distancing is. It has sweet FA to do with the disease. It's got nothing whatsoever to do with it. This is all about breaking people's spirit, opening up to persuasion, to dropping ideas in. And also, I believe that the government, certainly in the UK, has been taken over or is being controlled by something or someone or some group from within or externally. I don't know what it is right now, but that would explain all this craziness. And very interestingly, my Lord Sumption video was taken down, as you know, and I haven't listened to it yet, but someone sent me a link to him on BBC Radio saying that he's been speaking to MPs about what's going on and they are too frightened to speak out about it. My question is, if that is the case, what are they so frightened of? I'm going to leave that there. I'll put a link to that video in the description of this one as well, in case you want to have a watch of it to listen to it, I think. And that's it for this video. Just to say thank you very much. And if you want to support me, you can do that on Patreon and Liberapay. I think it is. I still can't say it properly. And just to let you guys know, you're absolutely amazing. I really, really enjoy doing these with you, and I will see you in the next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.